I know that your podcast has switched homes essentially. Where can people find the Raven Effect podcast now, and how has that affected you?
I don't know how it's affected the viewership. You can find us on Westwood 1, which is, I guess, just another platform. And I'm not even sure why we actually left. But, I'm a Jericho man, so said we're leaving. I said, all right, we're moving on.
So did you get any feedback from him in particular? Or was he just like, hey, we're gonna move on?
Pretty much.
So you were cool with that?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to do the show, so to me, it's just a matter of having a forum for it, So, I mean, I'm not going to change the show any. There's no. I'm sure there had to be a good reason why we left, but Jericho had so much going on at the time, with the New Japan show, everything else. I was like, yeah. And I do know why we left, more or less. So it's not like I'm totally in the dark. They kind of gave me the rough draft, but I can't talk about it anyway. But
sure.
So it's easier to just play dumb.
So what made you finally take the leap and start a podcast? Because I mean, like, so often, whenever I'll ask people who are the greatest wrestling minds as it pertains to wrestlers, the three that always come up are you, Scott Hall, Jake Roberts, and you're giving people like kind of insight into that now. What made you do that?
Well, I actually, before anybody ever had a podcast in the wrestling business, I had a video blog, and I just couldn't find a way to monetize it. So any opportunity for me to listen to myself talk is always fun for me. But I just couldn't find a way to monetize it. I was a couple of years too early. And then there was a way to monetize it, but I didn't have any connections, when the podcast really started booming, but I had no connections. And let's face it, I mean, I was a decent level star at one point, but this is 20 years past my prime, or at that point it was 15 years. So it's not like I could call somebody up and go, hey, I'm Raven, give me a show, or at least I don't think I could have. If I could have, I should have, but I don't think I could have, so I'm not that egotistical. And so it was just a matter of the waiting game. And then I started talking to Chris when I saw how well he was doing, and I actually proposed a show with me and him together, and which he just didn't have the time for because, he's got a band, he's got a family, he's got wrestling, so.
Then he's got more wrestling on top of that, like never done.
And he's got his own podcast to do, I proposed a show together, I'd be the second banana, but he just didn't have any time, and I also think he's probably would probably be a little hesitant anyway because he knows me well enough to know that second banana is not usually the position I play. But in all honesty, I would have been more than happy to be second banana because my goal always was after wrestling to be on talk radio.
Yeah.
Like if I could have had my career druthers, my first choice would have been to be on Love Lines would have been with Dr. Drew on Love Lines. That would have been the perfect gig. And but then I always realized that if I'm going to do that or have something like that, I'm going to have to learn to be second or third banana because the only way to get there, I figured, was to get on a radio show somewhere and be the second or third banana, so the hosts don't feel impinged. So I felt like I could definitely play a second banana. And then there's also, as second banana, you don't have to come up with the bits. You don't have to come up with the stuff, to just basically show up, go to work. So it appealed to my sense of laziness and slothiness. But instead, Jericho's like, he's like, yeah. So he thought about it, but he just didn't think he'd ever have the time, and probably me being the second banana, he probably figured I'd probably try and become first banana, which I wouldn't have, but he doesn't know that.
It's a lot of potassium.
Yeah. Also, I've grown up a lot. I mean, the person I was when he knew me well and the person I am now is like, I'm the same guy, but I'm a much better person, you know, all around. And I'm much less egotistical and much less in need of, I don't have the need to be center of attention. I don't have that insecurity anymore that I used to have. And so, anyway, but luckily he thought highly enough of me that when he started his own network, he's like, all right, I want to give you your own show. And then at first it was a little difficult because I'm like, all right, who am I going to do this with? Because I'm like, I don't want to go do an interview show with interviewing people. Like, I don't mind doing that every so often, but he's already doing that. So,
yeah.
And he's going to get better guests than I'll ever get. And I don't want to get a bunch of wrestling guests because I don't even want to talk about wrestling so much. Like, I don't mind it now because I wasn't forced to. And because I wasn't forced to, I'm coming back to my love of wrestling. But for the longest time, I lost my love of wrestling. And so basically, now we still don't talk about wrestling that much. It's more wrestling adjacent. Like, it's, you know, that's the best description I can give. The podcast is wrestling adjacent. You know, like one of the segments we have is the name game, where I find out where I do all the work, which is why, as First Banana, you have to do all the work. And so I find all these, try to go through Wikipedia and find old-timers that have gimmicks, that had multi-gimmicks that no one's ever heard of. And then I make up a bunch of fake names, and my co-host has to figure out which ones are the real ones, which ones are the fake ones. And because some of the names are so obscure, like Greg Valentine used to wrestle as Boxcar Willie.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, who knows that? Nobody. So it's a really fun game. And then then I make up the most ludicrous fake names, but then I make a few fake names that are realistic sounding, and so he has no idea. So I mean, it's a great game. So that's like one of the segments, but that's still it's wrestling adjacent. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not like we're talking. Oh, we also talk about UFC fights. We talk about if there's something big that happens in wrestling, we'll talk about it. And my co-host Busby, who's amazing, he'll want to know anyway because he still follows wrestling. Yeah. I don't follow it so much, so he'll lead me in, and then I'll just answer what I really think.
Did you happen to catch the slaughter that Valentina Shevchenko put down last night? Speaking of UFC.
Oh my God! Yeah.
That was
what a horrendous refereeing job.
217 strikes to 1 was the final count.
Even worse was the girl tapped out and he missed it.
Yeah, he missed it.
I mean, luckily Shevchenko wasn't trying to kill her because, I mean, that could have been bad.
We do shows with Frank Trigg all the time, who is into reffing now. And, like, he'll always point this stuff out, and he's like, man, so many of these guys are out of place. Like, longtime guys like Yamasaki who should know better. It's like what did that woman do to him before this show?
Well, it's funny. You never heard the talking heads ever bury anybody.
Yeah.
But Eve Edwards even goes, he's the worst ref ever.
Miserable.
Yeah,
and that's saying something. Mazzagatti was really bad too.
Why would somebody want to be a ref in the first place?
Yeah.
I really don't get that. I've never got that. I mean, I get wanting to watch the sport. I get wanting to be in the sport. But I don't get why you'd want to referee it.
It's a very, very, tough, trying process, and very few of them ever make it to the top consistently where there's any money to be made. Like, a small, small fraction. And a lot of athletic
There's money to be made at it?
Yeah, they're, at the UFC levels, essentially. Like, if you're, one of maybe 5 or 6 that you can make a little bit of money at it. But, here in Kentucky, they'll have a few refs, and they won't even take applications, for trainees and things like that. The commission just doesn't have the money for it.
Yeah, but so if you want to be a ref, I would think you'd want to be a ref at the lower level, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just for fun. And then if it works out, you get to the higher level. But why would you want to do it for fun?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, man. So on your podcast, have you gotten into any hot water? You're known as a brutally honest guy, and I'm sure some of your stories have involved painting some people in maybe an unfavorable light that they don't like. Have you gotten any heat from anybody for that?
Yes and no. I've become more tactful in my old age.
Yeah.
And it's also because I've become a better person. So I don't feel a need to heal on people just to heal on them to make myself feel good. So I only heal on people if they truly deserve it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I still think, when Fred Ottman, like we did a name game with him with Typhoon.
Sure.
And so we were talking about when he was, what was his gimmick? Thunderhead or
Shockmaster, Tugboat.
Shockmaster, yeah, Shockmaster.
Yeah.
And so I think most people would have expected me to laugh my ass off at him, but all I could feel was sympathy. You know, I don't know if that's because but even at the time, that's all I could feel. I mean, because he's such a nice guy.
Oh, he's the nicest guy.
I mean, he's the one guy in the business that probably it wouldn't kill his ego if that happened.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why he was the guy, but that's a sucky reason. But man, so there's something where I guess people would expect me to, they just go, he sucks. But instead I'm like, oh man, I really feel bad for him, So I don't know. It's kind of, when I heal on somebody, it's because I have reasons, not personal, not psychological, but just strictly because they did a shit job or,
sure,
or a bad performance, which is just, it's a job of a critic anyway. So I try not to heal just to be a heel. And besides, my co-host Busby is so dickish anyway. Nicest guy in the world, literally the nicest guy in the world. But for some reason, he does some dickish things, and so that's become his running gag that he's the most dickish man alive. So he does all the dickish stuff.
On our site, we're looking back at some of the more fun WrestleMania moments, and I thought that, like, the one that came to mind for me was WrestleMania 17, that hardcore match.
Right.
That was just a blast to rewatch. There's spots where you go through the window, and then you jacked a golf cart and you drove it straight into a gate.
But I ruined the greatest spot in the history of WrestleMania.
I was going to ask you how that was supposed to go.
Yeah, we were supposed to get chased. We were supposed to be driving, and Big Show's choking me while I'm driving, and we drive all the way around the building with Kane driving behind us in hot pursuit. But what happened was I drove. There's the fence. There's a fence that looks like a wall fence. So I thought if I careened into it and bounced off, that it would look cool because I'm getting choked by a 400-pound guy. But instead, I hit the fence, didn't give back anything, and I just fell off the curb. And then, but the best part is I came within millimeters of turning off the power to the entire building.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's one of the crew guys came up to me later and said, do you have any idea how close you came? I go, what do you mean? He goes, you were within millimeters of running over the cable that supplied power to the entire building.
Oh, man. So how does, like, a Vince McMahon or somebody react to that spot that had been planned out and not going the way that it was intended? Because it seemed like you recovered quickly. I
think because I let myself get run over by Kane, I think that changed the scorecard really quick because the bump looked so dangerous.
Yeah.
That I guess they forgot about it, It's
like when you hit your brother and you let him hit you to make it okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
except he hits you in the nads.
Yeah. And then you went through a window. Like that was just one of the more fun WrestleMania matches I can ever remember. Like so much of this stuff like today you won't see, and even back then you're like, I can't believe that just happened. And I think just the visual of Kane getting into a golf cart was more than worth it.
Well, here's the funny thing is they were like, all right, so leave your jacket on so you can go through the window. I'm like, why would I leave my jacket on? I go, it doesn't make any sense. They go, yeah, well, we want to protect you. I go, I can't. I go, it'll look too stupid if I'm wrestling the whole match with my jacket on. I go, in fact, I want to take my shirt off because if I'm going to go through glass, I want to get all cut up. But that just didn't work out. I forget why. But but the glass doesn't hurt anyway. I mean,
Sure.
it's car window glass, so it doesn't come out jagged. It comes out in little bits.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really safe. But they were really worried about it. I mean, and they don't even like me. They were worried about it.
What kind of relationship do you have, or have you had recently with WWE? Have you done any network stuff? Like, have they contacted you for any reason? I mean, I know you had a lawsuit, so
yeah, I'm back to persona non grata, I assume.
Ahead of the lawsuit, how was it?
I was actually I did a couple of DVDs. The Paulie one, and I think one with Bubba and RVD about the hardcore title.
Yeah.
But so I just think that, and then apparently, like my minions always send me when I make a list.
Yeah.
Like I was on all kinds of lists, you know. But I just think that Vince didn't know about those because I don't think he would have approved. You know, I don't think he. I've been persona non grata there for a long time, so I just think that. When I got put in those stuff in those lists, I don't think anybody in the Vince level reads them or would care.
Yeah, right hand not knowing what the left hand's doing with digital and stuff. They'll often put people like that in there. I saw recently that you kind of reunited with an old WWF name in Pierre Pierre Oullett. How did that come about, and what was that like?
That was really cool. We were never close because he was under Jacques' wing and he didn't know any better because Jacques brought him in, and Jacques had particular stay away from the boys when they're not not at the building, a relatively good strategy normally, you know what I mean? But it isolated Pierre, who already speaks a foreign language, and Jacques' been known to get heat, as have I. So I'm not saying anything out of turn, but so Pierre was kind of isolated, and I never, I just got put with him, and I'd already gotten so salty at that point after being in the business 3-4 years, but it was a long 3-4 years I'd been in the business, so I was pretty salty at that point. So, I just was doing it because I had nothing else. I didn't want to be a manager. I didn't want to be Johnny Polo, but what am I going to do? So I was biding my time. And so suffice to say, well, we never really became close or anything, but we never had any heat. Although I think Jacques has. I think I've got heat with Jacques for some reason. I have no idea what. But
a lot of people have heat with Jacques, and they don't know why.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But anyway, so Pierre, so I get booked on this show with him, and there's never been any heat between us, so it was great. I mean, it was great seeing him. Well, what was really cool was I came up with an idea because they wanted him to turn on me at the end of the match. So I go, why don't we use your and Jacques' finish, the cannonball off the top, and I hold your hands and direct you. I forget what it's called. What's it called?
I thought it was called the cannonball.
Oh, maybe it is. So I go, why don't we do the cannonball? After you hit the guy, you pop up and celebrate. I'll cover the guy, and then you get hot about it. And
the Quebec Crash, that's what it was called. Sorry.
The what? The Quebec Crash?
The Quebec Crash.
So, and we're in Quebec or somewhere in Canada. I think Quebec, somewhere. And I said, let's do that. When he went up and I went to put my hands up to hold him, the place erupted. I mean,
wow.
I don't know, 300-400 people. It was a good house. But the place went, I mean, it was the biggest pop of the night. And it was really cool because they all recognized the spot, and they recognized me doing it with them, because they knew I was Johnny Polo as opposed to, so it was just a really cool moment. So I'm really glad I got to do it.
I thought that was really cool when I looked at it because, ahead of an interview, I want to see how often, where somebody's working and stuff like that. And I saw that and I was like, what a cool reunion that is.
Yeah,
like,
it really was.
What an awesome callback, and that you all did that in the match. That's so cool.
Yeah, and then it was we're both slow dressers, so we're both like the last two left in the building. Or plus, I was riding with the promoter since I was the talent, they brought in.
Mm-hmm.
So I was staying with him, or he was taking me to the hotel or whatever, and him and me and Pierre were like the last two left. So we just sat there and BS for like 25, 30 minutes, maybe even longer, and it was really cool because we hadn't caught up in 10, 15 years. Longer, maybe 20 years.
I just thought that
It was really good. It was really cool. It was a really great moment live, and it was a really great moment backstage because we really got to talk, and he got to explain some stuff that he thought that I would like to know, which I did. About his relationship with Jacques and and different stuff like that. I mean, not in a bad way. He didn't bury Jacques, but just explaining, like I told you, how he was kind of isolated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I always went out. So, I guess he felt like, he wanted to explain why he never went out. But I never, I just say I didn't have anything against it. I don't care if anybody else goes out or doesn't go out or whatever. I was going to tell you this before. This is a really good story. I don't know how many people know this, but or how many times I've told it. I think only a few. But back to the guy almost winning the title, but quitting instead, because the program changed. So when I came into WCW the first time as Scotty Flamingo, Dusty calls me in a meeting, and it's me, probably Magnum, Dusty, maybe one other person, maybe two, and DDP, because DDP kind of brought me in,
Yeah.
And so he goes, listen, I got big plans for you, baby, big plans. He goes, I'm going to start you out, because you got the cool dress, the cool style. And that was a Dusty Rhodes impression. I don't know if you could tell because it was so bad. But anyway, so he's like, yeah, that cool style. He goes, well, you're a cruiserweight, but you're a big cruiserweight. So I figure we start you out as a cruiserweight, make you the champion. And then after a little bit, you start moving up to the heavyweight. And then you challenge Ric Flair, because he's like all styling and profiling, and you have this cool style and dress. And I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm hearing this. DDP's kicking me under the table, and I'm trying to look just completely composed. So is DDP, and he's kicking the crap out of me under the table because he's so excited. So am I. Phil Watts came in, that went down the toilet.
Aww.
I know, it was so funny because even worse was I wasn't getting booked in the house shows much, because the guys they were going to get rid of in the next 6 months. They were trying to give them as many bookings as they can. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't getting booked on house shows much. So when I finally was my turn to be on the house shows, that's when Watts came in and pretty much finished me up. So it's like, oh, man. Like, I was just finally starting to get somewhere.
I always wondered, like, what was, what that light heavyweight division could have become, because having yourself, Brian Pillman, Jushin Thunder Liger, and even Brad Armstrong, that's a hell of a start.
Well, Pillman was super excited because he was tired of having just matches. He wanted to have a program and storylines. And then at one point, like, he blew out his quads on one of his legs.
Ooh.
And not a major injury. It wasn't a major blowout, but it was enough to kind of slow down his high flying a little bit. And he was really worried. And I was like, dude, don't worry about it. I go, because this is when we thought we were going to have more storyline, which, Watts came in and took care of. But he goes, man, I'm not going to be able to fly as much. Our matches aren't going to be as good. I go, don't worry about it. I go, because I spent 2 years in Portland learning how to work, from the grappler, who's one of the best workers I've ever seen. And I learned all the tricks, and they were fresh in my head. And I'm like, man, I can walk us around all that. No one's going to miss any of that stuff. And he's like, but he was so used to being a high flying guy, all high spots, that he was really concerned. But that's where he learned, partially how he learned to start working. And and his favorite spot became this really goofy spot that it just became one of his go-to ridiculous spot where the heel goes for the handshake. Nobody even does this anymore, I don't think. I never see it. But I don't watch it on TV, but at house shows I never see it. But the old handshake spot where the heel puts his hand out and the babyface won't take it. Finally, the heel goes, come on, trust me. Milk it. Finally, the heel goes to shake hands. The heel goes to kick him. The babyface blocks it, kicks the babyface, or kicks the heel, bumps him, whatever.
Yeah.
But instead of that, I think I showed him this. It was either that or Mike Graham. Or maybe Mike Graham showed me and I showed him. But so you put the hand out, the handshake. The heel says, the babyface says, no, I don't want to do it. He puts out his left hand to shake lefty. Now the heel's perplexed. Why does he want to shake my hand left-handed? Now the heel's doing it. Should I do it? And the fans are all going, yeah, do it. And he's like, I don't know, but it's a cool role reversal.
Sure.
And then finally the babyface, the heel goes to shake his hands lefty, and because it's just shaking hands lefty, you take the right arm, you put it under the heel's shoulder, and you hip toss him. And that's the payoff. And it's such a goofy spot. But Pillman loved it because it was so unlike anything he'd ever done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that like became his favorite ridiculous spot.
Did you see his kids? Did you see that his son is wrestling now?
Yeah, I heard about that.
Trained by Lance Storm. That's
Speaking of that, like that ridiculous spot.
yeah.
You know what's funny is people. My whole point is yeah, that's a ridiculous spot, but it's the whole idea of taking your time, making stuff mean something. You know, you can get so much mileage out of so much stuff.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest problem. That's one of the reasons I got turned off from the business. Not the main reason was it just wasn't any fun to watch anymore. But that's beside the point. But when I go to indie shows, I hate the guys they make nothing mean anything. And sure, it's exciting, but they're going to be, this generation of people coming up are going to be so beat up. Their careers are going to be twice as short as the generation that just left. And that was a drug addicted generation, you know, as the generation that's ended. My generation, you know, we killed ourselves internally with drugs.
You couldn't feel anything though.
What's that?
So maybe you couldn't feel anything though.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, but now this generation, luckily they're not the addicts like we were, but instead they're going to kill themselves physically. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like the level of you know, like one mistake and your career's over. I mean, like that Hayabusa guy. Didn't he do his
it's tragic.
He went to do a lion salt or something and landed on his neck because the rope was slippery or something?
Yep, basically what they call scorpioned himself and broke his neck, and now he's dead.
Oh, did he just pass away?
Yeah, he passed away, I think it was last year.
You know, and then that guy I read about, that guy Shibata that headbutted the guy so hard.
Yep.
That he got brain damage or something.
Yep.
He cracked the skull. It's stupid. I mean, this is why. This is one of the reasons that people hate talking to me is because if you can get me to talk about wrestling, which is rare, I'll get on a soapbox. But it's like the idea of it is because wrestling, it used to be real, but it became too much of a pain in the ass. You know, the art form, and it is an art form, the art form is making everything mean something, you know, showing your pain, you know, by your physicality, your body motion, and so making it mean stuff because you could take one punch and sell it for 5 minutes if you sell it right. But because no one does, everybody wants to do 8 million things, and I'm not saying don't do the crazy stuff, but if you cut out half the crazy stuff, your career will be twice as long. It's idiotic. I mean, because it's an art form, the whole idea is to make it look real without hurting each other, you know?
Yeah.
And like guys now all want to work strong style, but all that is it takes away the skill. And it's so frustrating because there's so much more athleticism now, but the mental game just isn't there. I mean, you know, there's so many – everything like, you know, guys will, you know, I mean, you can't go back to the way old days, but you can go pretty far back. But, you know, it's like when guys would do a drop down, you know, it wasn't a drop down. It was the guy went to take your legs out.
Yeah, he tried to trip you.
Right. And first he would trip you. And then after a while, somebody goes, hey, why don't I jump over it? And then it just became a thing. And then reversing a guy used to be a hope spot. If you're beating a guy up and beating him up and beating him up, and you shoot him off, and he reverses you, the people come up because you've been beating him up, and now it looks like he's turning it around because the guy in the center is usually the one on offense. So, boom. You can make it little, but now guys do reversals of reversals of reversals, but not understanding why they're doing anything. So it's frustrating, but – you know, God bless them. I mean, they're better athletes than I ever was. I was never a great athlete, you know.